My name is Tim Blumentritt, and this presentation covers strategic innovation. All firms, especially the most successful ones, have the ability to manage change in their strategies, while the pillars of high-performing firms will always be sources of distinctiveness and operational excellence. The match between those elements and the demands of the market are always shifting. Characteristics and capacities like adaptability and innovation management are key to maintaining the fit between what a firm does and what the market demands. Throughout this course, we consistently come across some core questions in strategic management. Clear answers to these questions about customer segments, product and service offerings, and markets form the essential foundations for productive business strategies. After clarifying these fundamentals, managers are then ready to operationalize their strategic decisions in the forms of actions and investments. The combination of the focus on particular segments, products, and markets, as well as the actions adopted in pursuit of them, establishes the strategic trajectories of a firm. Once on a certain path, firms benefit from consistency. By repeating what has already made them successful, they become both more effective and efficient. This is fine until markets change, and they always change. Change comes from everywhere, including very broad societal forces described by the PESTEL framework, such as the impact of the COVID pandemic on markets and work environments, to the rollout of new technologies by competitors or requests for new products or services from customers. When the gap between the consistency preferred by a company and the demands of the market become too great, performance will certainly suffer. We do so by discussing the industry life cycle, corporate entrepreneurship, and innovation processes. In fact, change is a predetermined condition just because industries evolve over time. This slide includes a basic but classic depiction of the industry life cycle. The life cycle begins with the creation of a product or service category. Actually, the birth of a new industry is a relatively rare event, but we are in the midst of one right now with the advent of artificial intelligence as a business category, but brand new industries are relatively rare. But once an industry is created, most of them follow a predictable path. First comes a development stage in which companies race to develop a new product or service category. The companies that survive the embryonic stage then move into a growth stage where the pressures move away from product or service development to scaling the business. The firms that come out of the growth stage then make their operations as efficient as possible in the face of increasing pricing pressure and to establish their businesses through well-known brand names and customer loyalty. If the product category and the customers and markets in which it is sold remain relatively stable, the category is likely to enter the later stage maturity and decline stages. Note that dimensions of demand and time on this graphic do not have scales. This is on purpose. The scales for demand would depend on the size of the industry's market. Some industries, like advertising or automobiles, are enormous. The total market for other product service categories are far smaller. This slide provides a view to the different scales for time in the industry life cycle. It indicates the number of years that different industries took to reach 50% adoption in the U.S. market. For instance, 84 years passed between the introduction of the automobile and point at which 50% of Americans owned a car, and 75 years before 50% of Americans took an airplane flight. This means that the time scale for these industry life cycles was quite slow. But things are speeding up. While it took over 70 years for 50% of Americans to have a landline telephone, it took only 14 years from the development of the cell phone to 50% of people owning one. Some industries rise and fall within just a few decades. The fax machine was developed in the 1970s and a vital piece of office equipment in the 1980s and 1990s. But it is obsolete now, substituted out by email attachments and electronic signature software. From a strategy point of view, two things should stand out from the industry life cycle. First, every business is going to have to change and evolve along with the dynamics of the industry. Activities and investments that would lead to success in one stage would be ineffective in other stages. You would not run a firm in the growth stage the same way you would run one in the mature stage. Second, firms will do their best to avoid the mature and decline stages, both of which are characterized by poor growth prospects and worsening profitability. Second, innovation is often shaped by the stage of the industry life cycle. Major innovations are part and parcel of the embryonic life cycle stage. As the industry moves through successive stages, less radical innovations tend to be more prevalent within firms. In the shakeout and mature stages, as growth slows and competition becomes more about price than novel product features, incremental innovation is often key to maintaining profitability. This is not to say that breakthrough innovations can't occur in established industries. Sometimes new ideas come along that reset an industry's life cycle. In strategic management, this is called disruptive innovation. It happens when there is a discontinuity in an industry's products or services. A great example of disruptive innovation is the automobile industry with the increasing penetration of electric vehicles. Some analysts predict that EVs will account for around 30% of all new cars sold by 2030. EVs have substantial differences than combustion engine cars, forcing traditional automobile manufacturers to dramatically change their production activities and supplier networks. They have had to innovate in ways that were not expected just a few years ago. This is where corporate entrepreneurship comes in. We mostly think of entrepreneurs as people who start new businesses, but entrepreneurial behaviors take place within existing businesses as well. The results of the entrepreneurial activities generally take two forms. First, firms can purposefully seek to develop new business activities in fields in which they have expertise and believe that significant growth opportunities. For example, Google reorganized its corporate structure and became Alphabet in 2015. It did so to create a corporate structure that would allow new ventures to grow. Alphabet includes Waymo, the fast-growing driverless car venture, and Wing, which is developing drone-based delivery technologies, along with Google itself and a dozen or so other business units. Much more prevalent are innovations within the existing business. Instead of creating new units, the innovations are melded into current activities. Innovations can vary greatly in terms of type and degree. Some are tweaks, such as when a restaurant adds a new menu item. Some are evolutions, such as when a company rolls out an upgraded version of an existing product or service, while others are transformational, such as when a company launches a significant new product line or enters new markets. Keep in mind, though, that entrepreneurial activities within existing businesses are not easy. In addition to costs of developing new business activities and the relatively high failure rate that accompanies entrepreneurial initiatives of all kinds, a firm's current activities often make it hard for innovations to take root. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, firms, like people in general, seek consistency. Doing the same things the same way leads to efficiencies and effectiveness, and is simply easier. Innovations have to overcome organizational inertia and restrictive ecosystems, which are fancy terms for the resistance to change, both within the firm and with its partners and systems. To overcome these challenges, firms do their best to be very purposeful about their innovation efforts. There are a wide variety of ways to manage innovation. Some firms adopt design thinking or Scrum techniques as part of project management systems, or scheduled internal benchmarks for approving and funding new offerings. All of these development techniques seek to facilitate the movement of an idea or a thought that exists just in someone's head into an actual product or system, into something that a firm can profitably deliver to customers at a price they are willing to pay. You know that innovation has become firmly entrenched once others try to imitate it. Again, innovation is not cheap or easy. Bringing a new product or service to the market requires the investment of time, energy, and money, all of which could be allocated to existing, already successful offerings or to the development of different ideas. An innovation effort is successful when the three elements of novelty, usefulness, and successful implementation all come together. Further, corporate entrepreneurship and innovation management can be directed at different aspects of the firm's business activities. This 2x2 matrix generalizes them. The lowest risk innovation efforts focus on improving existing products and services as offered in current markets. These efforts are low risk because the changes are easier to budget and can be implemented on a clear time schedule, meaning that managers will be able to more precisely predict the return on any investment in those innovations. As firms pursue more impactful innovations, either by moving into new products, services, or markets, or by developing new technologies or business systems, or even trying both at once, the predictability of innovation efforts goes down. At the same time, the payoff for breakthroughs will be far higher than for incremental changes. Risk and reward go hand in hand in innovation management. The organizational capacity to engage in change efforts, like responses to industry disruptions or innovation management, are based in competitive agility. Being purposeful and disciplined about change efforts, which can be expensive, is an aptitude beyond the capacities needed to run a business that is already on solid footings, which itself isn't all that easy. Underlying the differences between first-order and second-order capabilities is the fact that agility takes place at the company level of analysis, but change has to be initiated and then adopted by individual people. Once a company gets into a rhythm, meaning that all of its people settle into established activities and mindsets, it becomes very hard to get all of those individuals to collectively agree on how and when change should occur. Everyone can have their own perspectives on innovation. If a change initiative doesn't gain sufficient support from a meaningful group of employees, it will die regardless of how good the idea is. In one view, there are 4 characteristics of adaptable companies. First, their executives are good at reading signals on factors of change. This can either mean that they pick up on market dynamics that could lead to shifts in the industry life cycle or to industry disruptions, or they can identify innovation efforts within the company that have true potential. Second, adaptable companies are good at fostering the change initiatives through experimentation. This allows them to test high potential ideas in ways with controlled budgets and protected initiatives. Third, while many change initiatives garner total support from the people that originally developed them, they are far less likely to be naturally accepted by other units that are forced to change because of them. Companies that are skilled at agility are good at rolling out innovations across all of their units, even ones that were not the sponsors of an initiative. Last, adaptable organizations embed change initiatives into their fabrics. Mobilization means that innovations become so ingrained into the organization that they are not really change initiatives any longer, but just new ways that the company does business. In many ways, it is as if the second-order capability of learning and changing resulted in new first-order capabilities to run a business. Putting innovation back into the context of business strategies, you can see that it is complicated and multifaceted. Recalling the key questions in business strategies, those that ask about a firm's core activities and investments, dealing with innovation and change becomes a balancing act. On the one hand, every marketplace is dynamic in some ways, so every firm must manage change regardless of the scale that they pursue it. On the other hand, innovation is often quite difficult and expensive and necessarily requires that a firm is able to grow and develop while still maintaining its existing competitive strategies. Just coming up with good ideas that can actually be commercialized, meaning customers will buy them at a price level that is profitable for the firm, is quite difficult. And that is just the first step of the innovation process. Taken together, firms are constantly balancing their decisions about sticking with what is already working as opposed to investing in innovations in their pursuit of long-term sustained competitive performance. The wisdom of maintaining that balance is a key strength of successful senior executives. To summarize this presentation, a key lesson is that markets will always change, potentially creating gaps between what a firm offers and what the market demands. Firms can adopt the same entrepreneurial attitudes that inspire new business to address those gaps. Innovation is the result of corporate entrepreneurship. Like any startup, the objective of innovation and strategic management is turning good ideas into successful business activities. The challenge is that innovation can be expensive in terms of time and money and subject to failure. However, if an innovation is highly impactful, it can improve a company's future prospects and perhaps even reset an industry's life cycle. And that concludes this presentation.